In this episode of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Minutecast, Scott Smith was talking here. He says Sean Murphy-Bunting did not practice. We'll talk about the status of him. We'll talk about Tom Brady saying that this Bucs offense has not lived up to its potential. And then we'll talk about the next game coming up here. We'll talk about all of that and more next on this edition of the Bucs Daily Minutecast. Keep it right here.
Minutecast Media.
10,000!
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers Minutecast starts right now.
Bucs on 3, 1, 2, 3, Bucs!
This is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Minutecast. Well, hello and welcome into this edition of the Bucs Daily Minutecast. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. You can find this podcast on the Bucs Report. Just look it up online at bucsreport.com. You can find this podcast on YouTube. Just search for the Bucs Report. And of course, this podcast is available wherever you find your audio podcasts. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. So just some news going on around the Bucs here. We'll talk about the injury status. We'll talk about how Tom Brady said that the referees are not robots. Give them a break. And then we'll preview the game coming up here. Head coach Todd Bowles says Cameron Brate is still in concussion protocol, but is getting in some work, and the team will see how he progresses this week. And we need Cameron Brate in there, as we know, without Gronkowski out there. That it has been a bit difficult to get all that offensive production out there. And Cameron Brate is a steady Eddie. He's a guy that's always prepared and does a really great job for this Bucs team. Todd Bowles says it looks like rookie Kenny Pickett has good command of the Steelers offense, and the Bucs expect to play well on Sunday. So getting additions to this team to help solidify so that the Buccaneers can continue, to keep building on wins and the positive momentum. Todd Bowles says second year Joe Tryon-Shoyinka played with more consistency in the most recent game, and that's what we're looking for. He's playing a big role on the team this year, and he has really stepped up, and his presence has been noticeable on this Bucs team. Cornerback Sean Murphy-Bunting did not practice on Wednesday, but Mike Edwards did on a limited basis, and cornerback Carlton Davis was a full participant. So once again, much like last year, the corner position is a position of concern. My take on it is that when Sean Murphy-Bunting is out there, this Bucs team always plays better. He's a very dynamic player. So it would be best if the Bucs could have someone like Sean Murphy-Bunting out there. That would be best case scenario. Mike Edwards on a limited basis, that's what we're talking about there. Carlton Davis was a full participant. So we hope that, the full cornerback position can be, fully stocked, shall we say, when we head into the next game here. Byron Leftwich, who played under Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, says he has so much respect for Tomlin as a coach and a man, says he learned a lot from Tomlin. And now he's a coach. He finds himself saying some things that Tomlin always did. That's kind of a common thing, if you've ever had a boss at work, and you work with them long enough. I've had that even at work where, you work with someone long enough that, you kind of take on their identity. So I think that is a good compliment. Byron Leftwich says rookie tight ends don't usually play as much as Cade Otton and Cole Keft are playing, but the coaches trust those two to do the right thing. Cade Otton was one of the guys that really stood out in the last game for me against the Falcons. Also Rashad White. So it is good to see some production from these new players, or new to the Bucs players this year, getting some production out there. As we know, injuries are a thing on this Bucs team this year. So to see, all these players stepping up and filling these roles is a positive thing. Tom Brady says there's always a degree of frustration in football. You want everything to go right every time, but that doesn't always happen. There are great players on the other side, and on his Let's Go podcast, he was talking about on SiriusXM the admiration that he has for Rodgers, the admiration that he has for Mahomes. And I think to a certain extent, some people look at Tom Brady and he must think of himself as, I am the greatest, and I'm pounding my chest at home. I'm the greatest of all time. No, that's not how real people think. I think, that is something that's in the back of his mind that, I'm one heck of a quarterback. But, I don't think he sits around and walks around his house going, man, it's great to be the greatest. I just don't think that is the way Tom Brady is wired. So to see that admiration that he has for the other quarterbacks in the league, his competitors in some cases, I think is just really admirable of Tom Brady. So Tom Brady says he doesn't think anyone on the Bucs offense has played up to their potential yet. So he's kind of putting a lot of his guys on blast there. Tom Brady, being the GOAT, being the greatest of all time, 7 Super Bowls, all of that, a guy like that can kind of make statements like that. You got to be careful when you're not that making those kind of comments. You can kind of isolate yourself, and you can have kind of a polarizing reaction when you make comments like that. Tom Brady says that Steelers' Cameron Hayward is one of the greatest players I've ever played against. Coach Larry Foote says it's fun playing in Todd Bowles' defense because everybody gets a chance to get after the quarterback. The players look forward to third down install on Thursday mornings. So it's always good to have that versatility. Foote goes on to say he can tell the Steelers rookie cornerback Kenny Pickett has the ability to process well at the NFL level. Those are all positive signs going forward here. All right, so after the break here, we are going to talk about Tom Brady's comments that were in the Bleacher Report, kind of, having the refs back, saying, they're not robots. They don't catch everything every single time, and that's okay. I think that a lot of this is due in part, I know it is, for the roughing the passer. Everyone, even if you're not a Bucs fan, you hear it all around the NFL, and Tom Brady gets the most grief because of who he is. I think that if he's not on your team, it's easy to not like Tom Brady. So I think that a lot of people like to look, for, he's getting preferential treatment here or this or that. But we'll talk about how Tom Brady says refs aren't perfect next. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Bucs Daily Minutecast. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. In this next segment, we are going to talk about Tom Brady saying the refs aren't robots and kind of, basically just give them a break. Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady addressed the recent string of questionable roughing the passer penalties that have happened around the NFL. And you know what I'm going to say about that? For the teams out there and the fans that like to make those kind of comments, if your quarterback got injured based on one of these quote unquote roughing the passer plays, then I think you could understand the value in those calls. Like I say, I think that a lot of times people, just because Tom Brady has accomplished so many things, they almost kind of wish bad things upon him. But, what I'm talking about, I think it's in the best interest of the quarterback. It's the best interest of the team. It's the best interest of the fans to have your quarterback protected to an extent. I don't think that we need to wrap them in bubble wrap, but to a certain extent, I think that you have to protect them, and I'm going to say that for any quarterback out there. I mean, you take a look at what happened to Jameis Winston last year when Devin White kind of horse-collared him down. Another one, did that change the outcome of the Saints season last year? Of course it did. So to a certain extent, you kind of have to protect the quarterback to a certain extent. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Brady said he doesn't think the referees are robots and they aren't trying to get it wrong when they throw flags after a quarterback is hit. Brady and the Bucs benefited from a questionable penalty call in Sunday's game against the Falcons. Grady Jarrett appeared to sack Brady clean for a loss of 10 yards on 3rd and 5 with 3:03 remaining in the fourth quarter, and the Falcons trailing 21-15. The officials called Jarrett for roughing the passer, giving the Bucs a fresh set of downs. It could be said that, Tom Brady earlier in the game felt like that the referees blew a call and, that they were making up for it. If you watch hockey, they do that all the time. Sometimes they blow a call and it seems like later in the game, they then make it up. Is it legit? Is it the right way to go about things? Is it tactical? Does Tom Brady have preferential treatment? Let's get over it. He is the greatest of all time, and no one wants to see him injured. So Tampa Bay picked up another first down and was able to run out the clock to preserve the win. Referee Jerome Bogger told reporters after the game that Jarrett unnecessarily threw Brady to the ground. And I know that I'm looking at this with a bit of rose-colored glasses because I am a fan of the Buccaneers, of course. But it was a spin move, and it seemed to me that he was thrown to the ground a bit aggressively. So, everyone, that's not a Bucs fan, think about if that was your quarterback, what would your thought have been? Everyone likes to defend their quarterback, but when it's Tom Brady or Mahomes or Rodgers, some of the best in the league, it's easy to kind of throw stones. On the heels of the controversy involving Brady, Monday's game between the Las Vegas Raiders and Kansas City Chiefs saw another questionable roughing the passer penalty called. Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones sacked Raiders quarterback Derek Carr and had possession of the football when both players landed on the ground. Instead of being credited with a sack and fumble recovery, Jones was assessed a 15-yard penalty and the Raiders retained possession. Just to bring it back to the Bucs here, I don't think that the Falcons were going to come away with a victory anyway. Is it possible that that could have happened? Sure. I'm going to go ahead and say it was improbable that they were going to win. Referee Carl Sheffers told reporters after the game that Jones landed on Carr with his full body weight, and the quarterback is protected from being tackled with full body weight. The Chiefs erased a 17-point deficit to defeat the Raiders 30-29, so the call didn't impact the final outcome of the game in the same way it may have in the Falcons-Bucs contest. Per Rob Maaddi of the Associated Press, the NFL plans to discuss the roughing the passer penalty during next week's owners' meeting in New York. And again, I can't overemphasize this enough. If it was your quarterback, whatever team it is out there, I assume most of the people watching this or listening to this podcast are Buccaneers fans. But say you are a fan of the Packers or you're a fan of the Chiefs. Would you want Rodgers or Mahomes thrown to the ground and potentially injured, totally changing the outlook of the season for your team? And make no mistake about it, that is what would happen. You take Mahomes out of there, how do you think the Chiefs are going to do? Rodgers, how do you think they're going to do? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers without Tom Brady is a scary thought this season. I know they're going to face that next year. This is what I'm talking about. Sometimes you have to kind of take the Vaseline off the lens and look through it clearly and kind of see what everyone's talking about. I'm looking at it as a fan of Tom Brady. Of course, I don't want to see him injured, but all my friends at work, I'm not from the Tampa area. So there's not a lot of Bucs fans where I live here. So a lot of them are like, well, that was a bullshit call. Of course you think that because the Minnesota Vikings are horseshit, always have and always will be. So it's easy to kind of throw, salt in the wounds of a Buccaneers fan. So that's what I'm talking about with Brady and the Bucs, and the play in general. I'm good with it, regardless of what team it is. Is there a chance that Devin White might get a little aggressive and throw a quarterback to the ground? Sure. Is he going to get called for it? I might not be happy with it, but I'll stand by the rule. And I'm saying that as I record this today, that I will stand by that rule. I might not necessarily like it, but a rule is a rule. All right, so in this next segment here, the Buccaneers at Steelers spread odd picks, expert predictions for week 6. This is in The Athletic, and if you don't subscribe to The Athletic, do it. The Athletic is the premier journalist covering whatever your favorite sports team is. Greg Ahman, in this case, covers the Buccaneers for The Athletic. It's worth the $7 subscription if you don't have it. The NFC South meets the AFC North on Sunday when the Bucs face the Pittsburgh Steelers, as was the case in week 5 against the Buffalo Bills. The Steelers enter their Sunday matchup as huge underdogs. Bucs versus Steelers kicks off at 1 p.m. Eastern Sunday on Fox. The Steelers haven't struggled like this in a long time, and no matter who's under center, the offense continues to struggle to produce. To make the matters worse, TJ Wattless defense is having a rough go of it. Still, coming off their most embarrassing loss I can remember in recent years, Mike Tomlin's crew will have to chance to return home and get back in the AFC North race, win over the Tampa Bay. Can they do it? We hope not. We want the Buccaneers to win, of course. It wasn't pretty, but the Bucs snapped their 2-game losing streak with a 21-15 win over the Falcons a week ago. Tom Brady and the offense still aren't quite at the level it needs to be, so expect the defense to keep leading the way, and they need to do that, and they need to work on their passing game. Let Tom Brady do what he does best. Needle that football right through an open, small opening and have a wide receiver catch it. Those are the games that are the most entertaining to watch. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for another big Bucs win. Like I say, you got to make hay while the sun shines. This is the last season with Tom Brady in the NFL, for one, and number two, his last season in the NFL, period. So, Brady came back for a reason. I've talked about that in this podcast for the longest time. He didn't put, his relationship with his wife in jeopardy. He didn't, put his health, his shoulder and his finger and everything in jeopardy to come back for one more year and lose. I'm not entirely sure why he came back. If you ask me, my knee-jerk reaction, it is because he felt like he deserved to win the Super Bowl last year, and it didn't happen. So he feels in his heart of hearts that if he comes back this season, that he's going to win a Super Bowl. Is that going to be the case? That is the question. And it is a tough question. I oftentimes hear a lot of people talk and they say, well, you know what? The Bucs schedule is getting a lot easier. I don't like those answers. I want the Bucs to win against teams that are tough, because you want to know why? The Bucs are going to have to go through tough teams if they want to win the grand prize. What's the grand prize, everyone? Anyone with their hand out there? The Super Bowl. Of course they want to win the Super Bowl. They don't want to make it to the playoffs. They can make it to the playoffs. The Buccaneers going to the playoffs with Tom Brady at the helm is not a big feat. Them winning another Super Bowl they have two so far in the team history. This is the last season with Tom Brady on the Buccaneers. Lord knows who's going to be QB next year. Trask, Gabbert, are they going to go and make a big acquisition in free agency? That's what I'm talking about here. So, I don't want to get off track and thinking that the sky's falling and this Bucs team is screwed. I don't think that's the case. I think there's always the possibility. But there are certain chinks in the armor of this team. What's the biggest chink in their armor? Ryan Jensen kind of set the ball in motion. The established center of this team, who, I think may have not even signed with the Bucs again if Tom Brady didn't come back, came back, and on paper, it seemed like they were in such a great position to do great things. And then Jensen got injured in practice, which, still to this day, seeing the footage of it pisses me off, because it was two guys surrounding him that were kind of getting into it, being competitive, and injured the number one center of the team. So then there was also a bunch of other injuries. You had the injury to Godwin with his hamstring. You had Evans getting suspended. You have the injury to Sean Murphy-Bunting. Who knows how long he'll be out. So, in the off season, when you hear of all these acquisitions and what are they doing signing this guy and this guy and this guy, because right now is the reason why there's a lot of injuries on this team. And if this Bucs team wants to make a push, and we all want them to make a good push into the playoffs and a Super Bowl potentially, that they're going to have to get their act together. The offense is going to have to start firing on all cylinders. Are they going to have to go out and hire or sign a big name free agent to get more offense? It's my contention that they might be best suited to sign, a more established center. The word is around the Bucs that's not the case. Spytech said that, what we have in-house is good enough. Okay, that's your opinion. I'm not so sure I agree with it, but I'll go with it. So in any case, I don't want to have this podcast to go too long. It is the Minutecast after all. Is that we're hoping for another good win for this Bucs team for some teams that are not that great. And I know what I said, I want the Bucs to win against tough opponents. I also want them to win these slam dunk games. The last thing you want, however, is to go into what they call a trap game, thinking that you're going to have it and then lose. You see that all across sports. You see it in baseball, hockey, football, whatever the case. You go in and you are the favored team over the other one, and then all of a sudden you lose the game. Those games really sting. So the Bucs do not want to fall into this trap game mentality. They have to be prepared. They have to keep their foot on the gas, and they have to keep their foot on the throat of their opponent. I know that's a bit of toxic masculinity, but whatever, it's the truth. Stick your foot on the neck of your opponent if you want to win. It's football, damn it. We're not talking about golf, for God's sakes. You got to be rough. You got to be aggressive. And if you want to win, that's what you got to do. The Bucs got to do Buck things. Devin White needs to get on his horse and ride around there and pull guys to the ground. Whatever you got to do. I want to pick up a win right now. Got to make hay while the sun shines, because Lord knows what we have next year. This is the Bucs' opportunity to win another Super Bowl. Let's not squander it. All right. Once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of the Bucs Daily Minutecast. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Again, you can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Bucs Minutecast. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition. and I'll talk to you again next time.